Hello there, people of the internet. I want to talk about 357 Magnum today. I had a conversation with somebody talking about 38 Special and 357 Magnum, and they were not overly impressed by the cartridge, not nearly as much as they should be. And I think it's because it's a 35 caliber bullet, a relatively small bullet in comparison to what that guy liked. He was a 45 ACP kind of guy, and he said versus going with 357 Magnum, which he called weak. Yeah. I can't remember what he actually said about it. This was a few days ago. But he said some kind of old slang term that essentially meant that 357 Magnum was a weak sauce cartridge, and that is absolutely not the case, and I don't know why he thinks that. I think this is one of those examples of if it's not a 44 or a 45, then it must not be very good, and that is why I want to talk about 357. So, of course, everyone's gonna bring up that you can shoot 38s in a 357 Magnum, and the 38 Special is by no stretch of the imagination an anemic or underpowered cartridge, even by today's standards. But the 357 Magnum is a magical round. So one of the huge benefits of the cartridge, that's our 38, here's our 357, if you look at them, line them up rim to rim, you can see how much more case capacity our 357 Magnum on this side has over the 38. It can withstand more pressures, it has a higher powder capacity, so you can get away with doing a lot more with the 357 Magnum. But the beauty about rifle rounds or pistol rounds like the 357 Magnum, I say rifle rounds because it can be used inside of a rifle. You can go out and get yourself one box of ammo, just one box of 357s, and you get yourself, I don't know, a revolver of some kind, you know, take your pick. There may even be some semi-autos in 357 out there. As a matter of fact, I think the Desert Eagle is in 357. That's one of my favorite semi-autos. But the point is, you can get yourself a handgun in 357 Magnum of some kind, be it revolver, semi-auto, whatever it is you decide to go with, and you can go out and get yourself a rifle in 357 Magnum. Then get one box of ammo, feed both of your guns, and have some really good, adequate capabilities with that cartridge. Why people assume that the 357 Magnum is weak is, I think that they're comparing it to 44 Magnum, and that is a terrifying round, especially when it is shoved through a lever action with a long barrel, and especially whenever it's max loaded. As a matter of fact, I'm doing some experiments with 44 Magnum right now. Video's coming soon, and that is a very scary round. That is a very scary round. I do not want to get hit with that. But that is just one of the benefits of your 357. It's quite powerful, but it doesn't have a whole lot of recoil behind it to the point to where most people could shoot it. And for those who can't, you can load up your firearm with 38 Special and let them shoot that instead. And I'm willing to bet that basically anyone can handle the power of a 38 Special. So on top of the light recoil, the fair amount of power, we're going to talk about power here in a second, because that's one of the things I do want to cover. It is not an underpowered cartridge. But the fair amount of power, the light recoil, and the ability to just get one box of ammo and feed both your handgun for, you know, your CCW or your side carry, your sidearm, and your primary rifle, be it lever action or pump action. I think that there's some pump action 357s out there. There may even be some semi-auto 357s out there. I'd be amazed if there wasn't. There's a lot of benefits behind the cartridge, and it goes beyond just the commonality of being able to go out and get yourself a box of ammo to run through your guns. The 357 Magnum uses a 357 diameter bullet. Yeah, who knew, right? But that particular bullet is extraordinarily similar to the 9mm bullets. I go out and I get myself pulled 9mm 124 grain bullets, and that's what I load into my 357s. That's what this right here is. This is a 124 grain 9mm bullet, and those are a 355 diameter. I don't see any real loss in accuracy, at least not that would be significant enough to matter at the distances that I shoot. And you can get yourself 9mm bullets for really cheap, like really cheap. They're one of the most abundant bullets out there, so you can load your 357 Magnum for not a lot of money. On top of that, it's a straight wall cartridge and it head spaces on the rim, what that essentially equates to is you can reload these indefinitely. That straight wall cartridge doesn't really expand and stretch nearly as much as like a cartridge with a neck would. On top of that, since it head spaces on the rim, that's why you can use different length bullets and different length cases inside of your firearm, assuming that your bullets aren't so long that the firearm's not going to operate. But since it head spaces on the rim of the cartridge, you can have any length inside of that chamber that you want as long as it fits inside that chamber. That's one of the same reasons why we can load 2 3/4 inch shotgun shells into our shotgun and 3-inch if the chamber is sized to be able to handle that. You know, it's the same kind of concept. Or we could load 44 Special and 44 Magnum into a firearm that's rated for 44 Magnum because they headspace on the rim of the cartridge. So you can reload the brass pretty much indefinitely. You can use extraordinarily common, cheap 9mm bullets to be able to load these things. You can even, you know, load with the 147 grain 9mm if you felt like going that route. That might be a little bit more on the pricey side. Might be better off getting just 357 Magnum bullets at that point in terms of the price. But as far as the 9mm in the 357 goes, it works. It works well. I've made videos of it working, so I wouldn't necessarily worry about that. Now, we talked about ease of reloading, cost of reloading, extraordinarily small. 357 and 38 are overwhelmingly abundant. You can find them very easy here in the US. Get 1 box of ammo, feed both your sidearm and your primary rifle. But what about power? Because that was the main point of contention that this guy was talking about. Maybe he was confusing 357 Magnum with 38 Special, because 357 Magnum has some power behind it. Like, for example, what's a good company that makes some powerful stuff? Let's talk about Buffalo Bore. Buffalo Bore, they are known for making really powerful ammunition, and their 357 Magnums are no joke. So this thing right here, it doesn't look all that intimidating. It's nice and small, and in this lever action, I think it holds either 10 or 12 rounds of 357. I can't quite remember. But Buffalo Bore's loading for 357, it's a 158 grain bullet, and they have this on their website if you don't believe me. You can go look. A 158 grain bullet, and from a rifle length barrel like what I got right here, that 158 grain bullet is going to be moving at approximately, 2,200 feet per second. Now, to put that into perspective, the 30-30, a full-fledged smokeless rifle cartridge, that is sending a 150 grain bullet at that same velocity. So the 357 Magnum is a little bit heavier, 158 grain, but that 8 grain, that's not enough to make or break anything. That's not enough to be, it's not enough of a difference to make a difference. And the quote Paul Harrell said, man, I miss that guy. I miss watching his videos. It's so, man, I just made myself sad. Rest in peace, Paul Harrell, my God. But that Buffalo Bore 357 Magnum is on par with 30-30. The 30-30 is a rifle cartridge that dominated the United States for, what, 80 years? So, yeah, I mean, realistically, I'd probably call it more like a century. It wasn't until the 80s, the 90s, maybe even into the 2000s, where we started to see the 30-30 cartridge, which for all intents and purposes, up to this point, was America's go-to cartridge. We started seeing it get replaced with the 223-556 as ARs became more and more predominant on the market. So that 357 Magnum round is on par with the 30-30 in terms of capabilities, which is absolutely wild. This little tiny thing right here sends the same bullet weight at the same velocities as your 30-30 cartridge, which is nuts. The fact that you can cram 10 or 12 of these into a rifle of this size is wild. If I was loading this with 30-30, I would get 4, maybe 5 rounds into this rifle before I ran out of room inside of my magazine. So that is an insane amount of firepower from one of these lever actions. Now, if we take that same buffalo bore cartridge and we run it inside of our revolver, of course we're going to lose some velocity. But depending on the size of your revolver, like the size of the barrel and whatnot, you're still looking at some pretty significant velocities. That 158 grain bullet is going to be moving about, oh, depending on barrel length, we're going to call it like 1,400 feet per second. So that 1,400 feet per second is significant coming out of a handgun. To put that into perspective, 10 millimeter runs a 150 grain bullet, if memory serves me correctly, at approximately 1,300 feet per second, give or take. Again, that 100 feet per second probably isn't enough of a difference to make a difference, but people talk about just how powerful and capable 10 millimeter is. 357 Magnum, for the most part, is more powerful than properly loaded 10 millimeter. There's a lot of 10 millimeter out there on the market that is not loaded to the spec that it should be, and that's probably a topic for another video. But 357 Magnum is more powerful than 10 millimeter, and people talk about just how capable 10 millimeter is. And I don't really understand that because it's really not all that capable of a round if we compare it to others. But again, that's probably a topic for another video. So if you think 10 millimeter is a fantastic round, then 357 Magnum, properly loaded 357 Magnum, should be more than enough, more than adequate to be able to handle whatever it is that you decide that a 10 millimeter is so good at. So combine the capabilities of that 357 Magnum in your revolver, along with the capabilities of that insane velocity with that bullet weight. I was not expecting 2,200 feet per second from a nice long barrel. That's nuts with a 158 grain bullet. They also have 180 grain loaded 357 Magnum from a long barrel. I think it moves at 1,900 feet per second, just under 1,900 feet per second, if memory serves me correctly. So if you want a little bit more mass for a little bit better penetration into whatever it is that you're shooting at, you still get really respectable velocities from that. As a matter of fact, I'm willing to bet that 30-30, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm willing to bet that a 180 grain 30-30 bullet is probably going to be on par with that particular 357 Magnum loading as well. So no, the 357 Magnum is not a weak bullet. I get it, it's not a 44 Magnum, I understand that, but it's on par with that of 30-30, which is nuts. That is insane. I gotta do more research on 44 Magnum, and I'm gonna see what kind of overly capable 44 Magnums are out there. I'm sure that somebody's gonna chime in the comments down below, give me some things to look for. So thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. But check it out. You guys go off. Have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see you on the next episode. Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.